Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 mod throwback, the show where we take a look at some older Fallout mods that I think either deserve a little bit more credit or I just want to shed some light on. And today we are checking out an absolutely amazing energy weapon known as the Rheinmetall EG7 by Utherien. Now, Rheinmetall is actually a classic Fallout company, and Utherien has adopted it to make a brand new, versatile energy weapon that can do a whole lot of stuff. Once you download this mod, you're not going to need any other laser, plasma, or other energy variants because this weapon will have you covered in all of those departments. At its core, the Rheinmetall EG7 is a pretty simple laser rifle, but it comes complete with a bunch of conversions over at the chemistry station, so you can turn this thing into a plasma weapon, a Gauss weapon, or even a grenade lobbing monster. Additionally, you do have some added ammo types that you can craft that will also change up the damage of the weapon. This thing is added to the level list and can be found pretty much everywhere. It's found on the Railroad, the Minutemen, Brotherhood of Steel, Gunners, and random raider bosses, and of course you can purchase it from merchants as well. It'll start spawning out in the world after level 25 and will spawn on merchants after level 30, and even has an added feature of being added to the level list of the Institute as a replacement. So by default, with this mod installed, the vanilla Institute laser rifles will be no more. They will be replaced with the Rheinmetall EG7, and I gotta say, it's a replacement I quite like. It is still very boxy, much like the Institute's design, but it just looks so much nicer. It's narrower, and it just has a really, really good look, and honestly, I think it makes a great Institute replacement, so I'm perfectly fine with that change. Of course, this weapon has a ton of stuff over at the weapons workbench, so you can customize it to your liking, and given that it is an energy weapon, you know that means that you can change it to fit just about any role on the battlefield. And of course, it has a whole bunch of skins, not only faction paints, but a handful of generic camos as well, so you can really make this weapon look exactly how you want. This truly is one of the best energy weapon mods on the Nexus, period. As if the sheer amount of variety added to the base version of this weapon wasn't enough, there are additionally 9 unique versions of this weapon. 9 legendary uniques scattered all across the Commonwealth for you to find as a sort of scavenger hunt, all of which with their own unique effects and are somewhat tied to the vanilla factions. So have fun looking for those, there are a ton of them. Now then, that's most of the big stuff. Let's go ahead and take this thing in-game, check out its stats and some of its other really cool features. So here we have the most basic version of the weapon, known as the EG7L pistol, L being laser, as again there are interchangeable variants of this weapon like plasma and Gauss. This thing is in the pistol format, though it is still held like a rifle because it is a rather large weapon. This thing has a base damage of a whopping 65, uses fusion cells by default, has a fire rate of 40, a range of 251, an accuracy of 79, a weight of 7 pounds, and a value of 606 caps. Now, one thing to note, that is a pretty high base damage of 65 with no perks and no attachments, but there is a good reason for it, and we'll get into it a little bit later at the weapons workbench. There is a way to modify this weapon to have increased and decreased damage based on the fire rate. So by default, it has the highest damage to the lowest fire rate ratio, and you can change that out at the workbench to behave a bit differently depending on your playstyle. Now, this weapon does utilize vanilla animations, those being the ones from the plasma rifle, but I'll still go ahead and show them off as I do really like the magazine design on this weapon. As you can see, a nice little custom battery pack, just looks really neat. Now, before we move on to attachments and all that jazz, we need to talk about the craftables over at the chemistry station, of which there is a good bit. There are 3 new categories for the Rheinmetall, first of which being where you craft the weapon itself, and here we have 3 immediate options: the EG7L, which is the laser variant, the EG7P, which will be your plasma, and the EG7G, which is your Gauss variant. But then there is also one here that is grayed out, and that is the EG7X, and this is the one that fires a giant plasma grenade that does absolutely insane damage. The only reason it's grayed out for me is because I am missing the biometric scanner, but beyond that, this thing is a super powerful weapon, so having a pretty hefty cost is good. Moving on to the next category, which is the Rheinmetall ammo category. The default version of this weapon does just use the fusion cells, but we can also craft extended fusion cells, which will have their own effects that are explained over in the weapons workbench. And here there are just a ton of recipes on how to craft them. You can convert fusion cores, plasma cartridges, fusion cells, all to varying degrees to give you different amounts of this new ammo type. So, pretty cool. And then the final category is the Rheinmetall conversions. This is going to allow you to convert different attachments into other attachments, as well as change out the type of Rheinmetall you have. So if you don't want to craft a whole new one or find one out in the world, you can turn your laser one into a Gauss variant or into a plasma variant using this menu here. Now, last thing before we jump into attachments, like I said, you can craft 4 different versions of this weapon, each of which perform very different from one another, and I want to show off those firing effects here. So this is the standard laser variant, which is pretty self-explanatory. It is a laser rifle, not much more to it there. We also have the plasma variant here, which I like a lot. And you can convert that to be semi-automatic, fully automatic, throw on a shotgun barrel. It's totally up to you. There is also a Gauss variant, which is just super cool. I really like the design of this one with the coils. Go ahead and show that firing as well. Has a very slow fire rate, but with the trade-off of a very high damage. And then finally we have the X variant, which fires a giant plasma grenade, and this thing just does a ton of damage. The projectile is super slow, but when it does connect, it leaves a hefty blast. Now then, let's talk attachments finally. There are a whole bunch of attachments for this weapon, not to mention different attachments per variant of the weapon. Now, the attachments that are different are mostly focused on the barrels, so I'll go ahead and show those off when we get to them, but the rest of them are for the most part the same, so we'll just be showing it off on the laser variant here. For starters, we have the ammo type. Now, by default, it's the vanilla fusion cells, which are pretty self-explanatory, but then we also have that extended capacity microfusion cell that you can craft over at the chemistry station, and these are going to function a lot like the vanilla fusion cores. So if you can imagine the way that the fusion core behaves on something like the Gatling laser, it's going to behave similarly here. So if you'd rather have that sort of system, you can convert it and craft some of that ammo type over at the chemistry station. Then for barrels, we have the standard barrel. There's not much to it there. For stocks, we have the option for no stock, the assault stock, the marksman stock, and the recoil compensating stock. Not that you really need it on a laser rifle. This thing doesn't have a ton of recoil to begin with, but it is there. We also have the ability to change out the color of the laser, red or blue. This will have no effect on damage, but it will just give you a nice little aesthetic change. For the handguard, we have the standard issue handguard and the tactical handguard, which will give you a sort of potato grip and a flashlight. We do also have a section for damage modifiers in case this thing just isn't doing it for you. You have the default damage and then all the way up to plus 150, nope, plus 200%. 200% is the maximum, giving you a damage of 155, which is just insane. We can also throw on a beam splitter or tuner, with a tuner giving you a damage increase as well up to 83, and a splitter giving you a damage increase to 69 from the base damage. Now this is the one section where things are a bit different depending on which variant you're using, so we'll go ahead and show that off now. If you are using a plasma variant, you of course have the option for no muzzle. You do have a plasma accelerator, and you do have a plasma splitter. So a shotgun and a sniper rifle sort of variant. Then if you're using the Gauss variant, you'd also have the option for no muzzle, a particle splitter, which will make this again effectively a shotgun, something we don't really have a comparison to in the vanilla game, so that's pretty neat. And then we also have the Gauss silencer, which is pretty self-explanatory. Back to the regular laser variant, we can move on to the other attachments. We do have the grip section where we can choose between the standard pistol grip and the assault grip, which quite frankly I really like the design of. I'm always a big fan of big guards like this. Just looks super cool, very sci-fi. We also have the sight section where things are a bit out of order, but we have a ton of Atlas optical scopes with different variants, whether you prefer 10 times or 4 times or 6 times. We also have the Atlas recon sight, which looks really, really neat. Then we have the magnified reflex sight, the standard reflex sight, the Rheinmetall reflex sight, the standard iron sight, and the West-Tech scope in different zoom levels from 10 times, 4 times, and 6 times. So you have a good bit of scope options there. We also have the capacitor section. Now this is what's going to really change how the weapon functions. By default, we have the maximum damage with the slowest fire rate, but as we go down this recharge, it's going to give us less and less damage, but more and more fire rate. So up here we have 65 damage and 40 fire rate, and down here we have 41 damage and 152 fire rate. So this is going to give you much more damage per second, whereas this is going to give you much more damage per shot. So it really depends on the playstyle that you prefer. And then finally we have the skin section, where we have a bunch of cosmetics that you can throw on this thing, starting with blue digital camo, the Brotherhood of Steel and the Brotherhood of Steel Lion's Pride, the dark red, the Enclave, the Flecktarn, the green digital camo, the Gunner's skin, the Institute skin, Minutemen skin, pink, Railroad, Special Forces black, tan, and US Army. And that's going to do it for attachments. We get a lot of really cool stuff in this mod. Alright, and now then it is time, of course, for our damage test with this weapon. First, we're going to start off by just testing out the default weapon with no damage modifiers, no attachments, and no perks, and just see how it performs on its own. Then after that, we'll be running 4 additional tests with each of the new variants of this weapon. So let's see how this thing does on its own against a Deathclaw, aiming for its weak point. Let's see how it does. And in 13 shots, this thing puts down a Deathclaw. Not too shabby. Keep in mind, this weapon does start spawning later in the game, and for those of you who are worried with the fact that it replaces the Institute lasers, low-level Institute synths will spawn with a damaged version of this weapon that has far less damage. So you're not going to have to worry too much about balance. This high damage will only be available in the late game. Now then, let's check out some more powerful variants of this weapon. Now then, let's move on to the big guns. I have a fully upgraded version of each of the types of this weapon: laser, plasma, Gauss, and then that crazy plasma grenade launcher. Each of which I have given the most damage I could with the basic attachments. I have not added any damage modifiers though, or any perks. So this is just going to be the weapon performing the best that it can on its own. Let's start with the laser rifle and see how it does with this newly increased damage. And that takes us to 10 shots from the previous 13. So a nice moderate damage increase, but we can probably do better. Let's try out the plasma variant. So it actually ended up performing worse with 11 shots compared to 10. So not that much better than the laser rifle. Let's see how Gauss can perform. This time we are using a splitter to get the best damage we can from the Gauss variant. Let's see how it does. Only takes 4 shots to put down that Deathclaw, but it does have a pretty miserable fire rate. So nice and balanced. It does do some massive damage, but it takes a while to shoot each shot. But then we have the crazy X variant with the grenade launcher. I'm going to take a step back because this thing has a pretty large radius. Let's see what it does to a Deathclaw. And almost kills it in one shot. It's going to take just one more. And there you have it. This thing is very, very powerful, though it has a very, very small magazine size, so take with that what you will. So yeah, guys, that is the Rheinmetall EG7. I've been wanting to cover this one for a while now, and I'm so glad that I did. Such a versatile weapon, tons of fun, and honestly, I think it's one that everybody should download. Not only is it an amazing weapon on its own, but it makes a great Institute replacement. So seriously, go out and try this one. I will have links down in the description below to both the PC and the Xbox versions if you want to try it for yourself. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to drop a rating, consider subscribing for more videos just like this. Big shout out to all of my patrons. And a special thank you to Helljumper2077, Indecisive Wolf, Jackie Noid, and Uthar C for contributing that Tier 3 Patreon membership. You guys are so generous, and I appreciate your support so very much. If you're interested in checking out the Patreon, it will be linked down in the description below, but all that stuff is completely optional. Thank you guys once again for watching the video and supporting everything I do, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace!